You have to look at little things like this as a landlord, right? Where if you just see a building and it's making money, you don't just walk away from it. Look to yourself and say, hey, right at the outset, what can I do that may be minor, but will make my property a better property?
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to The Remix, the video podcast that keeps you in the mix of everything real estate. I'm Noelle Freisen.
And I'm Eric Anderson, and today we're going to talk about how to get extra value out of mixed-use properties, how to identify areas of cash generation.
But first, let's introduce our other panelist, our power panelist, Nima Ameri with Ameri Law Firm.
Welcome.
He's our legal eagle.
Knowledge. Right.
So today we're going to talk about how to find hidden value in a mixed-use rental property. That's my specialty. I love mixed-use rental properties. That's pretty much all that I buy. And we're going to talk about a specific property that our friend on the power panel just bought, Mr. Nima Ameri. So I'm going to set it up because I sold it to you. So let me tell him what it is. So it's a mixed-use rental property. It has 4 apartments and 1 retail and a really, really, really big parking lot. And it has a lot of red tape and a lot of hair on this deal, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff. And I like to say that I find all the value on everything, but there's something that I missed on this deal, and Nima found it. So I'm kind of like pissed at myself for not finding it. But in any event, Nima, tell us why you bought this rental property. What excited you about it?
So let's walk through the process, right? Eric comes to me. He knows I'm interested in looking for these properties. And he says, look, I've got this property. But he didn't really think I'd want it. So actually, no. What happened was Eric was showing it to someone else. And we were on the phone, right? As my wife likes to say, he's my boyfriend. And he's like, oh, I got to show this property. I'm like, oh, tell me about it. And he told me about it. I'm like, oh, I want it. I'll buy it. And, you know, Eric is a nice yin to my yang where he understands I'm impulsive. And I'm like, all right, well, if you really want it, tell me you really want it. I'm like, no, I really want it. Give me the numbers. So Eric gives me the numbers. I crunch the math. And the numbers don't make sense. Is the property worth it? Yes, but we've talked about this in other podcasts, right? You as an operator can actually hurt the value of your own property. Like it can be worth it, but people won't buy it because you've hurt the value. And this landlord hurt the value of the property. So I or someone like Eric or other people are able to move in on a deal.
So I think Noelle.
How did the landlord hurt the value?
Right. So Noelle wants to know how it hurt the value. Let me just give one example before you get there. There's a commercial tenant, and this commercial tenant was a salon. And during the marketing of this property, I specifically said to the landlord, do not sign any new leases. Okay, because as everybody knows from having past discussions here, the rental income is what controls the value of your property. It controls how you can get a mortgage on the property. It controls so many things. So when we took on the marketing of this property, the commercial tenant had maybe 8 months to a year left. So during our negotiation and during our marketing process, the landlord behind my back signed, how many years was it? Like a 3-year lease or something?
4 years.
A 4-year lease.
God.
The property sucked even before that.
Yeah, and now she made it worse because she just took out all the potential. So the way that we sell stuff is we show what is your potential future growth in rents. And, you know, for me to go to Nima and say, look, the rent doesn't work today because it's $1,000 a month. But when I tell him that in 6 months he could raise it to $1,500, all of a sudden he gets interested in something like that. But what this landlord did is they just locked themselves through another 4 years and they screwed up everything.
So it was even worse than that.
But you still bought it.
Yeah,
We're getting there.
So we're getting there. So I do the numbers. I say, Eric, the property also had a slight environmental issue. So what does that tell me as an investor? Right off the bat, I know that I've now eliminated 98% of my competition, right? A lot of you guys who watch this podcast, we're in the real estate game, you know, you're paper tigers, right? You know what you're doing, but you're leveraged, right? You're all on loan basis. You need bank financing. And that's great. You can amass a fortune doing that, right? Not a lot of people, and there's a lot of you guys who watch this, there's a lot of people out there who can, but there's a much smaller percentage of people who can write big checks, right? And a property that already has an environmental issue is going to require remediation. And
what was the environmental issue? I missed it.
We don't know 100%, but it failed to phase 1. right?
Okay.
So no bank will lend on a property that's failed to phase one. Now,
Okay.
when I say no bank, there's exceptions. You can get insurance for it. I don't know if people even do that, but for the general rule is once you have a phase one, you can't get bank financing until it's resolved. The seller doesn't have the funds to resolve it. She's not a good operator, right? I don't even think she's making money on the property. I think she's doing it at a loss.
Yeah.
Sweet lady, just not an operator.
And most buyers don't know what to do with environmental issues, so they just walk away.
That makes sense.
So now that it has to be a predominantly cash purchase, I have eliminated, in my opinion, 98% of the competition. So I go in with a cash offer of about $80,000 under ask. How much was it under ask?
About 80,000.
About 80,000.
Okay.
Eric's like that's low. When I do the numbers, I say, listen, Eric, like here's a rent roll, and Eric tells me, well, this is what you can get in rent, and my answer,
But not for 4 years.
well, I didn't know
We
the
didn't
lease
know
term
that yet.
right?
Because we were I was still working under the
Assumption.
existing lease structure that I was given, and the assumption that this seller knew that
we
she
thought there
should
were no
listen.
leases. They were
Yeah.
all expired, other than maybe 1 year on the
Yes, on the
barbershop.
barbershop.
It gets far worse. So fast forward, and my response always is, if my aunt had nuts, she'd be my uncle. So you can't base a purchase off of what the property will be, right? You guys as investors are stupid if you do that, because you're basically giving free money to this operator who didn't bring the value of that property, and you're going to pay them at a value that you're going to have to do the work to get to, right? Never buy a property thinking it's worth this much because I can put the money in. It's worth what it's generating that day for that seller. If
That's what it should be worth. However, not all deals go that way. And
No,
sometimes
there's
sellers won't
exceptions.
let it go.
No, but you know what? Most sellers, most smart institutional investors who will survive up and down economies
Are going to buy the way he said, yes.
right? We
So
buy
you're
it.
buying what it's worth, what it's making. This is.
Look, I'll give you an
look for a
example. You
feature.
go see a car. It was just in a bad accident. You think to yourself, once this car's fixed up, it's worth $100,000, right? Seller says once it's fixed up, it's worth $100,000. So I'm going to sell it to you for 70. You're going to say, well, it's all fucked up now. I'll pay you 30 for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want me to pay 30, then put my money. Like if you think it's worth 100 and
go
you're going
do
to sell
it.
it to me for 70, look, why don't you do this? You put 40 of your own money into it, get it worth 70, and I'll buy it from you for 100 because now I got no headache.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
If you're going to take on the headache, buy it at the discount. So I refused to budge. I had a number. It was set. I said, this is
Yes.
what it's worth today. I said, Eric, no one's going to buy this.
And wait, Nima will walk away.
I did walk away.
He is not a bluffer. He's not trying to emotional. Well, he might be trying to emotionally mess with you, but
I may
he
be a
will-
bluffer, but then
But he will walk
I'll
away.
mind war myself because
Right.
Eric will know I really want it, but then I'll fight with myself not to really want it, but I'll really still want it. I'm a complex person.
And understand, we had a lot of challenges trying to sell this property, so it's not like we ran to Nima, because I know what a challenge it is to sell him anything.
Well,
He was not my first choice, but the seller really wanted to move the property, so we had.
It
put
was
out
on
a
the
very
market for
large-
quite some time, and it's not like Eric went and pushed my offer. They rejected my offer the first time.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Eric's like, do you want to go up? I think this is a great property. It was a great property. Eric's like, this is a great property. Do you want to go up? And I said, no. I said, no one's going to buy this property. Come back to me when she's ready to sell. Fast forward about 3 months, maybe 4 months, and property still hasn't sold.
Yep.
Now, at this point,
We had actually offers that were higher than his, but what happened was once the environmental issues came to play, then the people pulled out. So let's say we had an offer. They literally dropped below where he came in, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 below, once they found that there was an environmental issue. So yeah, as an agent, you have to be really careful that you understand what your seller understands, because people come out there and they negotiate price strategies and price points and say they're going to buy something, but if you don't know that they know about the environmental issue and that if they don't understand it, they're really giving you a fake price. So you have to be careful with that.
and I'll say this, Eric may be my friend, but Eric what's the best way to word this? Because I don't want to say you did anything bad to me, but throughout all of this, no, Eric always advocated for the seller. So, and I will
But
get
that's his job.
That's his job, and I respected that.
Right.
Like one time, Eric tried to put lipstick on a pig and be like, "Oh, look what I did for you," and I'm like, "Excuse my language, bitch, please." Like I was like, "You like who do you think I'm an idiot? I was born yesterday." I was like, "You made the better deal for your client, but it's also a good deal for me," and we'll get to that. So that's why I respect Eric. He really knows what he's doing. He wasn't like, "Oh, you're my boy, let me get you a deal." He told me F off on the first time around. Fast forward 4 months later, I said, listen, this is my number. And it was about even $10,000 less. Now, I still had no idea the issues with due diligence that I was going to run into. But notwithstanding, I've always said this in the podcast. This is what my father told me. He goes, Nima, it doesn't matter what cycle you are in an economy. Always buy a property where you can make money in the worst economy.
Yes.
And you can make even more money in the best economy. Don't chase things. It's okay to walk away.
Yeah.
And he's always right. And when I was younger, I was like, it's impossible. You can't put these numbers. He would make the deals happen because he had the checkbook. And at the end of the day, when people need to sell, they need to sell.
If you have cash or you have the way to do it, yes.
And especially because no one's going to touch it with environmental.
Well, they may,
Less
but
people.
nobody did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and she wanted to sell. So fast forward a couple months later, Eric and I are at the property again. I said, Eric, we're just there. I said, fuck it. I want to do this. I want to do this deal. I was like, make this happen. I was like, here's my number. Eric walks off, right, to make his call to the seller, obviously, because he wants to raise my number up for her because that's his job, right? But he also understands that he has to give me something in return for going to a higher number because I wouldn't do it. I was very firm at this point now for 5 months plus where I'm like, this is my number. So Eric comes back and he goes, and he created a creative solution, which was good for both of us.
Which you're good at.
So effectively, I would buy it for 80% of the purchase price cash down. I'm just using random numbers. And they would sell or finance the balance. It wasn't at a high interest rate or anything, but they got a little bit more money, right? And in return, and can I say what you did that you thought was cute and creative and that I was Dumbo? So
You thought it was cute?
I never thought you were
let me
Dumbo.
tell you guys this.
I
Let
love
me tell,
that there was some
let me
Dumbo
tell the
cute.
podcast is watch him blush. I want a camera on him because you'll see him blush. So he comes to me and I offered X dollars. He goes, Nima. He goes, Nima, I'm going to do one better for you. And I was ready to buy cash at that number. He goes, it's going to be a little bit higher, right? But she's going to finance a small portion and it's interest free. I looked at him being like, okay, no problem. I was like, that sounds good. Let's do it. Lock it up, right? Now, on one hand, that is still good for me, right? Because at the end of the day, any amount of finance, I could put that money into the building for immediate renovation.
repairs.
But what was really funny for me was it's not interest free if I'm paying more money, right? So
Right.
if I'm paying X amount of dollars more, that's basically the interest I'm paying on the money that I otherwise would have bought.
We needed. we wanted to hit certain numbers for the seller.
You made it a win-win. It's
Listen,
all about the win-win.
I'm going to give you $10, or it can be
All right,
$15 interest free.
Just stop. So this
I
was
get
a
it.
way. This was a way to get both parties comfortable with the transaction, so we could move forward.
He made a deal happen. I was stubborn and I was stuck on this is my number. Seller said I'm not going below this number. He found a creative solution to say, look, Nima, it makes sense for you to give this number because at the end of the day, right, it's still paid out seller financing. I'm still not deploying that capital, which has value, and the seller's getting the number she wants in a manner where she's comfortable with.
It helped her
Eric
with
made
her
the deal happen.
taxes. It helped her get some more money. It just helped all across.
$100,000.
It helped all across the board.
It
both
cut
parties.
her losses, her monthly, like that property was losing money on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So it cut her losses, it cut her headache. So this is why I respected Eric, where he didn't push my number. He could have done that and he didn't. He advocated for his seller. He understood where I was out as a buyer, and it didn't change the fact that I was his friend, right? To say that, look, I'm going to try to get the best deal for my seller. And honestly, I really do respect you for that, right? Like
Thank
that,
you.
like
I tried to do that for
I
everyone.
wasn't like, oh, Eric, get me a deal. Like
I wouldn't get it for you.
No, I knew that
Yeah.
Eric first. He went out there to try to get deals from other people, and it had nothing to do with the commission. Like it's not a $10 million property, so the commission structure we're talking about this was moot. Now, what Eric didn't realize is Eric gave me some hypothetical numbers. He said, "Look, your rent is this. You could get it up to this." Meanwhile, right,
Here we
Eric.
go.
What I love about Eric is a nice vanilla box, right? He does things in the most proper way possible. Not that I do things improperly, but I'm looking at this thing like I'm in a goddamn octagon, not a box, right? And
All right, so let me set the stage before you tell them what you did.
okay, you gonna get
All
the
right.
poll?
The pool.
It's on the stage.
The poll.
don't
We
even
go
know.
dance because bands to make.
I don't even know what that means. So we're going to talk about some of the different ways. So first, we showed you some ways to get to the acquisition of the property and finding some value where we did the seller financing, where we tweaked some of the things there.
Can I just say something
Yeah.
about that? So this is why we have real estate agents. This is why you guys go to school and you get your license and you see credits and you learn with your brokers, because if you hadn't been the person there, this would have never
The
happened.
deal would have never happened.
Because
I would have
you-
offended so many people.
Well, you
Well,
would
yeah.
have gotten the property and it wouldn't have sold. So
But that's why this profession is so important. Don't ever let anyone tell you that real estate agents aren't important. This is why.
and it's also
Good agents.
Good
you have a
agents.
shit
Yes.
agent.
Yeah. Yes.
Like if you had a shit third party agent, you'd get nowhere. with
You
transaction.
have to go with commercial experienced commercial agents to do commercial properties, and you have to go with reputable commercial companies, not residential companies pretending to be commercial, because it just doesn't work. I have 20 years of experience. I learned how to do all this stuff, and these are some of the things we're going to share. So back to the hidden value. So once I found out doing due diligence that this lease was changed and it was extended for 4 years, I was really frustrated because I thought it was going to pull the
We haven't even gotten there yet. Talk about the fact that there was no contingencies. Now, guys, we're both locked into a committed deal where Eric also negotiated very limited inspection provisions,
Sure.
structural. Which,
Yes.
by the way, I never even at my numbers, and I'll say this 1,000 times. The numbers I buy properties at, I truly don't ever need to inspect, because no matter what is wrong with that property, right, I'm still in the go.
However, Nima also has a background of construction to a degree. An average person who doesn't have that should
you do.
inspect.
You grew up in it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't inspect either, but I know what I'm doing.
One of the due diligence was they had to finally turn over the leases. Throughout all of this, I kept asking Eric, get me the leases, get me the leases. And he kept asking the client, and they
Well, we
wouldn't
had
give him
the
the
lease.
leases.
We had the old lease.
Was she
I got,
being
like,
like,
one
was
bullshit
she
lease that was
being
like a year
one
long.
skittish about
We
it?
had one lease. I honestly
5
don't
units.
think she had all her pieces together. She,
Okay.
she wasn't a professional property manager. She had inherited the property.
Sweet woman,
Very
but
nice
she was getting eaten
person.
alive by these people.
Yeah.
I want to know who this is, but go ahead.
No, they were not doing her right. She's a good person, but they
So let me tell them what
it takes some grit.
Right. So I consider myself an expert, but sometimes
We do too. Don't worry.
Thank you. Sometimes it pays to have different. I was so close to this property trying to sell it for over a year that sometimes things blur, and it's always good to have a second set of eyes. So during the process, when Nima was doing his due diligence and we were pulling out the leases, and then all of a sudden a new lease was discovered, and that's when I thought we were all screwed because the deal was going to die because the lease extended this ridiculously low rate for another 4 years. Right? So that just takes
Everyone got a lease. It was
Yep.
like lease Christmas. The lady you're not paying rent, fucking here's an extension. You too. Here's another year and a half.
So the landlord
did she have
somehow
any idea?
produced leases that were not there.
Did she have any idea that that was shooting herself in the foot?
I told her, I'm pretty direct, and I said, do not enter into any new leases.
Everybody got a new lease. It was
So was she just being a dick? I don't
lease
get it.
Hanukkah. Every day everybody got a new
I
lease.
feel sometimes people that don't have experience, they get pressured. So, but the one lease I want to specifically talk about is the commercial lease. So that was really where I expected to have a really nice bump in rent. I didn't expect it in other areas, which we'll get to. But
we saw this transaction completely differently,
Yeah.
Eric and I. Eric looked at there's one store frontage, and Eric said, you can get your value add because this place is worth about 50% more,
Okay.
right? And for me, that was the least important aspect of how I viewed this property. So it
You
was,
were looking at the rentals upstairs?
We'll
I
talk
didn't-
about that, but
but you never let me in on that part of it. But anyway,
I couldn't have, because I also knew that if Eric knew I knew, he would try to get me to pay more for the property. I love you, but dude, I saw it.
Okay.
You were, but that's your
that
job.
still remains to be seen.
But no, that was your job.
Yes.
Your job was to advocate for the seller. And
Yes.
when I realized, guys, this is really important. Honestly, I consider Eric like a brother. Like, we talk all the time throughout the day. But I knew that Eric's character and his professional conduct, right, would not transgress into our friendship. This is very interesting. I knew that although I was Eric's friend, Eric would not breach his duty to his client, which was the seller, even as a dual agent, for my benefit because I was his friend. And if I let Eric know, and I hope you're not offended by this.
I'm not offended.
If I knew
I'm glad I didn't know.
that if I told Eric what I had in mind, that Eric would not have fought to get that deal happening because he would know how much more money I would make out of this property. So I actually withheld information from my friend and agent because I knew that that would affect his ability or
But
his
you're allowed
desire.
to do that.
Of course I'm allowed to.
Yeah, but
I have no
I'm
obligation
saying
to tell
even
people
as
my-
a friend, even as
Sure,
a friend,
also-
you're separating your friendship from business, which makes so much sense.
Well, I had to
Also-
because Eric
Yeah.
would.
Sure. Also, Nima is an attorney, as you know.
Right.
So he has more power to do things than a non-attorney would because he can do attorney stuff for himself without having to pay for it.
This wasn't even attorney stuff. This was just straight
Well,
up beautiful mind.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, tell us about the commercial.
Let's get to the commercial. So, I have like 200 tenants myself. I pride myself on knowing all the ins and outs of commercial leases, on how to manipulate them, on how to change them for the benefit of either party, whatever.
And
So-
I'm new to commercial.
And he's new to commercial.
I'm more residential.
So we had talked about this property and we had talked about the potential add-ons, because there's 4 apartments, there's some parking areas, there's all this stuff. We talked about some of the add-ons. But I got stuck on the fact that this person extended the lease for 4 years, and Nima looked at it, and he didn't, in all fairness to me, it didn't come out right away. It took him a few days or a week or so for him to see this, okay, because we were talking about other areas. But do you want me to say where it is, or do you want to say it?
No, you can say it, but guys, I credit myself to the fact that I thought of it.
Yeah, he did, and
I'm only
total-
residential.
Wait,
It's
I'm
my
lost,
first
I'm
commercial.
lost.
I did give him credit. So
So
the
what happened?
lease, so the building had room for like 30 cars parking. Let's just
Okay.
say.
14.
Okay.
14 car parking. So the lease that was extended,
Exaggerate everything.
okay,
You're like 30.
the lease that was extended by that barbershop didn't have any parking in it. It
Oh.
was silent on parking. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't recognize the fact that it was silent on parking, and I knew that we could charge for parking outside of that because we had talked about charging for parking outside of that. But I didn't really think, oh, here you go, you have a captive tenant who parks here, and you can just now close off the parking lot and be like, you can't park here. So that's the part that Nima caught that I didn't catch, and I kicked myself for not catching that. But so that impressed me.
Did it bring that person up to like market rate or to something that you
well,
felt?
It had the potential of recovering almost 70% of that lease failure.
Okay.
And that was just the beginning. So what I did was, now,
Oh, this poor tenant.
let's talk commercial and what I did
No,
to
it's-
residential. So the commercial, the parking spots, it costs like $1,300 to, it's called striping your parking lot, right? And it's like, guys, use your head. Like something that just seems that simple usually is that simple. Like it's not rocket science to draw a line on the floor of a property.
So wait, it cost $1,300 for them to walk with that little thing.
Yeah, the parking
And
lot.
I could have done that.
That's about $1,000 to $1,300, right? Eric, fair?
What?
$1,000 to $1,300 to stripe.
Yeah.
Taking that little thing and
yeah,
just
yeah.
walking with it.
So
okay.
instead of doing all of that, I go on Amazon. And first off, I get there and it's a parking wazoo because there's a restaurant next door. And this restaurant is parking like nonstop there. So I go there a couple nights and I start calling the police and I'm ticketing cars that shouldn't be parked there. There's appropriate signs, everything. So I'm beginning to set the tempo that there's, after I've closed, that there's a new sheriff in town, right? Now that I've done that, I go on Amazon and I order a striper for myself. It was like $200. Right? So I bring my worker and I look up these city ordinances. It has to be minimum 9 feet wide, 18 feet long, and I stripe the entire parking lot. Like, it's not rocket science to figure out how to maximize your space. So now that I've striped,
Now I understand why we've been going stripe crazy in all parking lots. But go ahead.
well, no, I mean, I bought the equipment and I had the guy.
Right,
so
right.
look, honestly,
Right.
like Eric's kind enough. I own a building in Hackensack as well, and I don't have parking. Eric lets me park in there. It wasn't going crazy. Right. Like I had the time and the guy. Like why wouldn't I do it, right? So anyway, we go and I stripe the lot. I order everyone's signs. I go to the restaurant next door and I put him in competition with the barber, with the tenant next door.
So he's raffling
So
off parking
who
spots.
wants parking?
So
Now, these
remember,
guys
we
are
have-
in conflict.
We now have, thanks to Noel, we have 14 parking spots. We have 14 parking spots, right? All of which were not generating any income before. Some of them were dedicated to the barber shop. Just
They were just using it willy-nilly.
they were just using it willy nilly. And when we talked about it, we had discussed that was a form of extra of rental income.
So and by the way, we'll get to the residential portion of it, but I took the residential rent roll and I made it 400.
Focus on the parking
All right.
spots.
So with the parking spots, I stripe and I order. It's like $35 for an aluminum sign, right? I order signs, and now everyone has reserved parking. So if this business wants the parking spots, which it could satisfy its business needs, I'm not kicking them out. They could park on the street.
They just got to pay.
Right?
They gotta
So
pay.
I gave him a deal on more. right? Because the restaurant next door wanted some, and I said, look, they want it. I gave it to my tenant for less to support his business, but he knew now that there's a market for these spots because next door wanted. I even had the signs ordered and delivered. I lost $200 on signs, but I would rather service my tenant in the long run. So now I brought his tenant right to almost market. I could probably still get more, but it's close enough where I'm comfortable. Stripe the parking lot. Every residential got a reserved spot, right? I cleaned the lot up, power washed the building. We're going to give it a coat of paint. Really just aesthetically making the place nicer. Today they're installing new floodlights and lights above the door for safety reasons, because when you own a commercial property that has a larger parking lot area in the back or on the sides, you know, the last thing you want is there being some kind of assault there's no history of it, right? But to say there wasn't good lighting, or you didn't have you have to look at little things like this as a landlord, right? Where if you just see a building and it's making money, you don't just walk away from it. Look to yourself and say, hey, right at the outset, what can I do that may be minor but will make my property a better property? So I had the whole thing power washed. I've had a dumpster worth of stuff removed, another dumpster coming in, clean the yard up. We're going to paint the whole place again, make it nice, rip out all the old wires that belong to ancient technology, just clean the place up. But the most important thing was the lights, because the lights weren't functioning.
Right.
And
how much money did you generate by renting the parking spots?
Oh, so I increased my rent for that unit 40%.
Okay, so you had, let's say, 14 spots. You rented 1,000. You rented 10 spots for $100 each.
I increased my revenue 40% on
let's
the
dumb it
commercial.
down. So you rented 10 spots for $1,000. Okay, so you just generated $1,000 more of rental income per month. That's just on the parking.
Let's make it even less. Let's say I rented 5 spots for $500. Why am I making that as an example? A lot of you guys would see a commercial property that, you know, is valuable and say, well, who gives a shit about $500, right? But this is where you're all wrong. $500 a month times 12 is $6,000 a year.
Yes.
$6,000 a year is either a good portion of your property taxes or your insurance, right? And even looking at that aside, if you take a property and you find a way to add $500 a month, which may be too even insignificant for you to think of, this is where you're stupid. You just increase the value of your property $60,000, because at a 10 cap rate, 6,000 times 10 is $60,000. So on a cap rate basis, by renting out a couple of spots or finding a way to make an extra $500 a month on a property that's generating significantly more money than that, you just added 60 grand to the value of your property if you ever wanted to sell it. Maybe more. That's at a 10 cap. Most properties trade at a 5 cap. If you're trading at a 5 cap, you just added $120,000 of value at $500 a month.
Or if you want to refi it, then you said
120 grand, because they're going to look at it at a 5 cap.
Yep.
So now you have $120,000 more to borrow on. So if they lend you 50 LTV, you just borrowed $60,000 more dollars off $500 a month.
Right. So he generated money from the parking spots. He solved the issue with the commercial tenant. Let's go over to some of the residential. So
this is where you were excited, the residential.
This is where we didn't have.
We won't go into too many details on that, right? But
we didn't have the same same mindset here. So for me, when you have a residential property, it's very hard to get residential tenants out. They all have to stay there. And Nima had some different strategies that he could use because he was an attorney that maybe someone else wouldn't be able to do as easily.
Oh, day 6, you don't pay me, you go in court.
Yeah. So there was
I got
one
pay legal fees and all that other stuff, which adds up quick.
Because remember, the existing tenant or the existing landlord put leases on all these, so Nima was able to work through them. But he'll
guys, look. So you have a signed lease. I knew I had these leases. Now the leases are coming into a period where they can start expiring, but I want these guys out. They're paying a third of market value. I don't want them there. Like, they could be the greatest people in the world, which they're not, because honestly, they began to run this property like they owned it, right? 2 dumpsters worth of garbage in the back, you know, a storage facility which had utilities in it just filled with shit, right? I brought a guy and I threw it all out. This tenant's freaking out. What are you doing? You told me I had this much time. Bro, I'm sorry. I didn't realize your name's on the deed. Get your shit out of here. If you can fit it all in your apartment, by all means. Don't put it on my property. You don't own this lot. You don't own this storage. I didn't rent you out this entire building for your pleasure. Use your apartment. And if you can't fit in your apartment, I don't give a shit. Unit. Now, a lot of people would take issue, right? Because once these tenants start becoming aggressive with them, who have been there for a long time,
they get nervous.
They back off, right?
People are afraid they're not going to get paid.
Don't pay me. You kick your ass out even faster.
But because Nima's an attorney, it was just a natural.
Also, you got to have a little bit of Stugatz, right? I'm not even
Stugats.
Italian,
Stugats.
but I don't know. Enough mob movies have taught me to know what that means. You got to be able to look at the guy in the face and be like,
Courage. You have to have some courage.
"Get your shit out of here." Like
You have to not be afraid to kick someone out because of the rent. As soon as you need that $600 rent or $10,000, whatever that rent number is, and you're afraid to go without it for 1 or 2 months, that's when the tenant has the upper hand.
even beyond that, the moment where you let them push you, it's your building. Like, don't be an asshole, but don't let people push you around. Give them what they deserve. Give them what they pay for. Give them the good utilities. Like I've immediately made this place a better place for the tenants.
Yeah.
I had exterminator come. They call me. I'm a good landlord, right? But I'm not going to tolerate being taken advantage of. So all this shit's right now in the parking lot. There's a dumpster coming. He's got a day to figure it out. He thought he had a week. I changed my mind. He had a day. I don't owe him any time limit on when he can get his crap out of common areas. Right. So at the end of the day, if you don't push it, no one's going to go out of their way to make that change. And
well, also you used him as an example too. So
there's no example. They don't give
no.
none of
But
them
I'm
give a
saying
shit.
everyone else, when they say, "Well, we're just going to leave our stuff here. We're going to do this, that, and the other," they're like, "Nima doesn't play because look at what happened to Billy over there with all of his
Billy with the good hair.
with all
Also,
of his electric
garbage
equipment.
breeds garbage. You can't let garbage sit
It
anywhere
breeds
because
mice,
just
guys. It
gets
ruins
more-
your
yeah.
building.
Yeah.
It breeds mice, right? So now I've effectively taken the apartments, which were the larger portion of this, that were just being ignored because we thought, okay, we can raise the rents to a certain number. I went 700% over that number. I took my entire rent roll, and when I'm done, I will be up 400% on my rent roll.
Wow.
So I'm up 400. I've turned this place into like a 40 cap, right?
He was able to do that with some creative lawyer stuff that not everybody could do.
But also day 6. So I went
typically, when you have a residential lease, each municipality has rent regulations, which limit what you can raise it. So in this area, the rent regulation was 4.5%.
unless you renovate.
Unless you renovate, or unless you get them out, or unless something happens.
So I get them out and I actually renovate. I drop $4,000 or $5,000 into each apartment. Brand new kitchen, nice new bathrooms. Put money into your property, guys. It's yours.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be afraid to invest capital into your property. Like right now, I don't have to do anything. I've got my rent roll, right? The other units aren't empty yet for me to do the full conversion. But I have had a guy there every day this week, either pouring cement, fixing the driveway. My goal is in the next 60 days, I'm going to be done with this property. It's going to be at the point where I want it to be, maybe 90. And I'm not going to touch it for the next couple of years because I have my rent roll coming in, right? But I've brought it to that. And also the commercial tenant had, I think, less of an umbrage of paying me more when I approached him. Well, first he realized he's going to lose it all to the chicken spot next door. But other than that, I think he saw that immediately there's work being done to the building. So if you're a landlord and you're putting money in, guys, you can confidently tell people, I'm putting money into this and your rent just doesn't justify what I need. Because honestly, I want a good building. Like if you want a rundown building, that's fine. Go rent it somewhere else. I'm going to make this a good building that costs money, so you got to pay your share, right? It's not a charity. And you have to not be afraid to do that. So we took this property that otherwise, let's assume hypothetically, it was generating $3,800 a month in rent cumulatively, right? Which is barely covering expenses and taxes. We're at $9,000 now. That's a significant change, guys.
Big improvement. Massive improvement. He can go, other than the environmental issue.
What did you do about that?
Nothing. I'm going to put in a bunch of buckets and dump it in Eric's backyard. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not going to do that.
We don't even know what the issue is. There's some potential challenges, but you don't really have to do anything with
40,
it.
50, 100,000. Look at the numbers I just told you guys. Where if I net out $90,000 a year on this
How do we get residential tenants? Let's be more specific on that. Give us some pointers. How do we change over residential tenants for the average person who's not a lawyer, who doesn't have the ability to litigate or to quote different
You can
laws
if you're not an LLC, you can do it yourself, but you do need a lawyer otherwise. You guys you need to understand that, what's the best way of saying it? They need to come to you, you don't need to come to them. Remember that. They need to come to you, you don't need to come to them.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by that?
It means that most landlords run and chase the rents. They go to the doors. They're calling you. The first comes, they don't pay. You have a grace date till the 5th. The 5th comes, they don't pay. You're halfway, if not 3/4 of the way through the month, and you're trying to work with these people because you want them to pay, right? And you're following up. You don't owe them shit. Every day that goes by, you provide the product.
Yes.
Right? It's their obligation to pay for the product if they want to use it. You don't have to go to them. Your lease should say, mail me my check on the 1st. I'm giving you a couple days because the post office sucks and you have until the 5th, right? But I need my money by then. And guys, at 11:59 p.m. on the 5th of each day, log on to speedyevict.com if you're in New Jersey, and there's a program that will just get it done for you. It'll even assign you a lawyer.
Hold on, is that operating?
It's up. It's up.
Is it
It's up
really
today.
called Speedy Evict?
Yeah. Long story about that. We'll have another podcast on that. But anyway, when that happens, right? If you don't have a lawyer, there's websites that do that, like speedyevict.com or
do our
evictionmanagement.com.
do our center for real estate people get a discount?
Yes, they do.
All right, awesome.
$4. No, we'll talk about that.
Speedy Evict.
So guys, so you log on and file. File. What do you have to lose? If they're not paying you by the 5th, guess what? You're probably not going to get paid that month anyway, right? I went up to one of these ladies. Listen, and this is an important lesson, right? I knock on the door. It's the 3rd. Give her the 3rd. I said, who is it? Landlord, right? Honestly, I've been saying that since I was like 9 years old when my dad used to send me to collect rent. Every time I feel like I'm like Joe Pesci in that movie, right? Like, who is it? Landlord, right? Like, I just feel horrible saying it.
Yeah,
but how else am I going to identify myself? Nima, Ameri, Esquire. No, like I'm your landlord.
Property manager.
No, I'm the landlord. So I go. She goes, open the door. I'm uncomfortable. Guys, never go into someone's apartment.
Oh, you told me about this.
Right?
Keep
If
on
you're a
going.
landlord, like, even if they invite you to come in, do not ever go into someone's apartment, especially if you know they're alone, they're a different gender. Always be cognizant and always be safe. You don't know what's going to happen. So I won't go into this apartment, right? I know, there's someone in there. It's a female voice. There's studios. I'm uncomfortable. I won't go into her apartment. So she says, open the door. Okay, I'll open it from outside. I crack it open a little bit. I say, this is the landlord. She goes, I realize that she's in bed. She sits up. She's got her blanket on her. Totally fine. She goes, come in. I won't go inside, right? She keeps saying, come in. I'm like, I'm not going to go in. I'm like, I'm a landlord. I'm here for rent. Do you have your rent? She goes, no. She goes, I get paid tomorrow. Well, I don't give a shit when you get paid. Your rent was due 3 days ago. Like, maybe you should have saved it from your last paycheck. Like, what? I didn't realize that somehow my rent is based off of your pay schedule. Like, I'm so sorry for inconveniencing your shitty budgetary abilities, right? But you're the landlord. Your bills are due on the 1st. So they got to figure out how to get on your schedule. Don't get on theirs.
Good point.
So anyway.
There is all truth to that, by the way. Even though he sounds really aggressive, it's true. Your credit card bills, if you don't pay them on time, you get that late.
28% interest.
Yep.
But what if she had come to you like on the 28th and said,
Fine.
I won't have it until this day. Would you have still been like,
if she was a tenant who pays her rent on time most of the time, calls me and says, hey, I got a problem. I need to like the
He would've
second
helped.
week or third week of the month.
Okay.
I was like, I'm just in a jam. I had some expenses that I didn't expect to come up. I had to pay some medical bills. Listen, no problem. But just understand that you may run into an issue then on the following month. I don't want this to be recurring. If you can't pay both months back to back, tell me right now. I want the other month on time so we get back on schedule.
Correct.
I'll work with you on this month. Pay me half, and we'll payment plan you the rest over the next couple months. I'll work with you if you're honest with me and you tell me what's up.
Okay.
But don't ever set up a situation where you know then all the rest of the months, because it's like dominoes that collapses. Try to get them back on schedule, and whatever they've missed, payment plan them.
Back to how you got the rent up.
All right. So anyway.
Oh, wait, no, back to the woman.
So I'm walking it through. So I won't
Right.
go. I won't go in. Leave. She goes, come back tomorrow. It's not my obligation to go back. I'm not your gopher. I'm not your just Uber rent. Like, I'm here.
Do you have Uber Rent?
No.
You should invent Uber Rent.
It's such a good idea.
Yeah, uberrent.com.
So anyway, so now it comes to a point where I don't have no obligation to go back. Her rent was due the 1st. I gave her a courtesy visit by the 3rd. There's no law that says you got to go every day and chase your rent down. It's her job to pay me my rent. It's not my job to go collect my rent.
All right,
Just
get
don't
to the
forget
point.
that. Nothing. The 5th came. She didn't make an effort. I filed for eviction, which is great because I need her out. She's got 3 more months left on the lease. Now, if she comes up with all of her rent, pays it, and if you have a good lease that has attorney fees, additional rent, where she
So
owed
she still hasn't paid.
Has
no,
she
but,
paid?
no,
Today
but I'm not
it's,
7th, 8th.
8th.
Well, I'm not there knocking on her door every day. She had her
not your
chance.
job.
It's
It's
not
not
my
your job.
job.
When will they actually evict her?
I'll have her out by April.
Okay.
And simultaneously, I file a small claims lawsuit before the number gets too big, so I can garnish her wages or whatever else. You got to bam, bam. Don't wait for the other. While you know where she lives and you can serve her, hit them and run.
Is it more
Not
cost
wrong.
effective to do these things? You're a lawyer, so you're not, like
Even if I wasn't a lawyer, you could
It would
still
be
do
more-
these if you're not owned by an LLC.
So small claims lawsuit, what's the max?
Now it's 5,000. Used to be 3.
okay.
So if you're on top of your game and you're only 1 month behind, most people will have access to it. You get heard pretty
So
quick.
if someone knows you 10, can you file?
Special civil.
But can I file for 5 if they?
You can. You're waiving the
just
rest of the
waiving it.
rest.
Okay.
But file for special civil. You'll still be going to trial within 90 days.
Oh, wow.
Right? So you structure it this way. You're on top of your game. You file it. Now, I was actually expecting her to live out her lease. It was a bonus that I got to kick her out sooner at a ridiculously low rent. So,
Well,
guys,
she
you
could still
can't.
stay, but-
You have to fall within the law. If you have tenants who are low on rent, you really can't do much to kick them out because you're violating laws, right? You can't terrorize your tenants. You can't force them out. All you can do is strictly follow the law and give no leniency. There's nothing illegal about following the law to the T, because that's it. The law doesn't build in that you should be, Jolly the Giant, Green Giant. Like,
But when you go to court, if she has money or if she's able to get some of it, won't the judge say, well, let's work with her? Because
No,
don't the judges
no.
want people to stay in?
no,
Every municipality is different.
no. The answer is no. The answer is strictly no. There's tons of case law on this. A court cannot make a better contract than you've negotiated for yourself. The court has no authority to change or amend your contract unless it's illegal, at which point then they don't amend it, they strike those portions that are illegal. In this context, no. If they come up with all the money that you allege is owed, and that's correct under the contract, what does that mean? That attorney's fees and all the additional surcharges you have are marked as additional rent in your lease? Then yeah, you don't have much of a choice. If you come to court with a check and say, this is everything that he complained that I owe, I've paid it off. Case ends. Court loses jurisdiction. Now, if they want to argue about what you owe, okay. And if the court says you owe it anyway, you get locked out. As soon as you get locked out, you have no obligation to take their money. If you accept $1 from them,
You have to let them back in.
yeah. So if they owe $10,000 and they give you $800, you say, look, give me $800. If you don't pay the balance till your lockout, you're out. No, they took that $800. Lockout's over.
Yep.
It's over. It's done. You got to start from scratch.
Okay.
When
so
you lock people out, what happens to all their stuff?
Oh, I put it in a dumpster and light it on fire. I'm just joking, guys.
You
That's a
have
complete
30
joke. Do not ever do that. That's like it violates like 9
put it in
laws.
storage, and you have 30 days. You have to pay for a storage facility for 30 days.
If you're residential.
If you're residential, commercial, I don't think you have to do anything.
No, it's called New Jersey's Abandoned Property Act, where it's not deemed abandoned until after a certain period of time. You can charge them for storage fees. But realistically speaking, like go to your lawyer, ask for an order for orderly removal, which deems everything is abandoned afterwards.
So wait, let's go back to you're following everything to a T, right? So that's how you're getting these people. What other strategies are you using?
So guys, look for rent in every avenue you can.
Hold on, let's stay on Resi. So because I have a way to get rid of people.
Yeah, but I can't gas bomb people.
Gas bump people? What's
You know that's
that?
Eric's strategy?
What is it? What
He's thinking about it. He doesn't even know. I don't even know.
I
But
don't know, but I don't like it. So
yeah, I'm too brown to say
where-
gas
where-
bomb.
where I'm
As a
gonna-
Middle Easterner, I don't think I could say that.
Where I'm going to go is you can offer people a buyout.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Yes,
No, never
you
do
can.
that.
Why?
Never do that.
You can totally do that.
Don't do that. Don't do
totally
that.
do that. You
Why?
Can say, look, I'm going to renovate. I need to renovate. We have issues in the building. We have a lot of problems here.
That's a New York thing. You don't have to do that in
You
Jersey.
can still do it in Jersey. You could offer someone, look, hey, I'll give you $2,000, please. I'll help you find another apartment that's better because this apartment sucks. And then you can get them out that way. If you know that you have a long...
I offer that. I filed for
You
eviction.
said you didn't offer.
No, not a buyout. This is what I did. I don't like to take money out of my pocket and give it. When they're already behind,
Yes, you can offer to waive past late fees.
Okay.
That's such a great way
no,
to get
past
people out.
rent.
Past
I was like, bro,
rent,
you owe me
yeah.
2 months rent. I was like, don't even worry about it. Just get the hell out.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, just give me till the end of the month. I'm like, well, that's the end of your lease. Like, this is the funniest conversation I've ever had with this moron, right? So I filed an eviction on this idiot tenant who literally paid me late, didn't pay me, and I filed for an eviction, and he acknowledges I owe him this money. This dodo bird calls me and goes, well, I need to stay till the end of this month. It's too hard to move out this fast. And I'm like, he's like, I can maybe get on a payment plan with you. And I'm like, okay, no. Like, why don't you just get out now?
You're not obligated to get payment plans.
No, I'm like, get out now. I was like, I'll do you solid. I'll waive what you owe me and just leave. And he's like, no. So we were back and forth on this for a couple of weeks. This is how stupid this guy is. So he calls me again. He goes, look, just let me stay till the end of the month. I was like, dude, your lease ends at the end of the month. I have court before then. I was like, I don't think you understand how negotiation works. I was like, you're getting everything you want, and I get nothing I want. You don't pay me what you won't make. You got a payment plan, so it's not even like you're gonna pay me off in one shot, and I have my money. So you want a payment plan, and you want to stay as long as you want. I was like, in return for what? What do I get? Right? I get nothing. Like, why would I say yes? I was like, you know what? At the end of this, what I'm gonna get is an eviction. And guess what? Good luck finding another apartment, because that stays on your credit for like 10 years.
Really?
Nobody will rent to you if you have an eviction on your record. No landlord wants to deal with two headaches. Someone else locked you out. They don't want to deal with that too.
Yep.
So I'm like, you can avoid all of this and not pay me 2 months rent. Just get out. He's like, well, I need till the end of the month. I was like, you lazy bum. You live in a studio. Pack your shit and go.
But he's leaving.
No, I'm going to lock him out.
Okay, so
he's getting locked out.
Okay.
He wants to stay till the end of the month. Then what? On the last day, he's going to be like, bye. Oh, cool. I already got my lockout. Fuck your credit.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, look, if someone...
You're going to have a lockout before the end of the month?
His brain was like, no, just give me everything I want. That's not how a negotiation works.
Did you use speedyeviction.com to get it done?
Yeah, they're so good.
Okay, so let's
Be fair. Give people good deals, but don't let people's stupid logic overcome you.
All right, so we're back to rent parking spots. Look at leases to see if parking's available. Look for ways to create and generate extra money. Look at how to get out tenants and replace them with new ones.
How do you cut expenses?
Well, you didn't cut expenses here.
I did.
What?
All the stoves are now electric.
What do you mean? They weren't electric before? You put all new stoves in?
I did.
You didn't tell me that.
I did. So for part of my renovation, every unit, so the gas has everyone has separate electric meters, right? Gas runs throughout the building. So the gas bill's on me. They're responsible for electric. There's no obligation to be gas or electric stove. I capped off the gas line. I ordered them a brand new kitchen, beautiful stainless steel appliances. And guys, at the end of the day, if you go buy these shit appliances for $500 or pay $800 for nice stainless steel, don't be cheap. Pay a couple more bucks, but give your people good product, right?
Yes, they'll last longer.
I'm like, and make the place nice. Like, don't be cheap. But the reality is that it's all electric now. So now where I had a higher gas bill, I don't. It now moves to the tenant who's responsible for those utilities. So they're going to be more conservative and they're going to care more because now everything is electric.
There you
the
go.
refrigerator's electric. The stove is electric. The microwave is electric.
Would the refrigerator
the
be
heat
gas?
is electric.
That's actually a brilliant idea. I didn't even think of that.
And they're actually
there you go. You
gas,
change it.
By the way, in the refrigerator.
Now, but just so you know, I'm going to give you an argument.
Close the fridge, right?
Yes. Well, but you don't plug in. You don't hook up the fridge to gas. But in any event, that actually is considered a rent raise. So if you were to go and argue that, you're creating an extra utility cost for that person that wasn't there in the initial lease. So a savvy tenant could argue against that.
But they won't. Well, let's not put that in.
You can't charge people for water if it's not in their lease.
Sure.
If you add the charge of water, that's part of your
But if electric
increase.
was in their lease.
But you're taking an appliance that used to be gas and converting it to electric, thus adding an expense. And I think a good attorney like yourself would be able to argue that.
Make that argument.
No, if you were fighting for the tenant, you would.
No, I wouldn't.
Yes, you would. Totally, you totally would.
Is there municipal law that says that's considered a rent increase?
It is a rent increase. It's anything that affects the rent increase portion.
Says who?
All right,
The law.
we're gonna get
whatever.
we're gonna get to last words about how we're adding value, and we're gonna get to last words. So give your last words on what you feel people should be adding value to their
Guys, my last words: be the change you want to see in your cap rate. Don't let the cap rate be the change you want to see in the world.
Love it. Don't rely on other people. Use your brain to come up with other avenues. Always look, as we talk about, look from above, look from the side, look from below, look everywhere at that property and see what other options you can the options you have to make more money out of it. So, subscribe.
Yes.
Yours.
Yes. Well, my thing is watch the remix.
No, give your opinion. Give your opinion. After hearing this, what is your opinion now on something like this? What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is that there's always a way to make something work for you. I mean, being creative, creative with the financing, being creative with getting people out, being creative with the parking. You can't keep yourself locked up in a little box saying this is the way things are done. You have to look outside and be like, well, what can I do? We're always trying to find creative solutions to everything.
Always.
Do it.
Always. So remember.
But subscribe. So that way you can find the creative solutions. And you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere where you get your podcasts.
And then maybe you'll get
That's
the
where
next
we
deal
are.
instead of Nima getting it.
Not gonna happen. You can't get to this.
So remember, if
Thank
you
you,
visualize
guys.
it, you can own it. See you next time.
Bye.